Hello and welcome to Tokyo Inklings. My name is CY. You can find me on my website at tokyostationpens.com, on Instagram at tokyostationpens, and on Twitter at tokyostationmnh.
And my name is Jacob, and I'm Fudefan on Twitter and on Instagram, and I have a blog at fudefan.com.
And this is episode 37. Can you believe it? 37? That's crazy.
It's actually the 39th, but yeah, the number is 37.
Yeah, we have two like special episodes, right?
Yeah.
All right, so as you know, Jacob, this is your favorite part of the podcast. We're going to read some reviews. Ready for reviews?
Let's do it.
All right. So first review we're going to read today comes from Apple Podcast from the United States. So this one is from Shreyas. Pleasant and fun to listen to for any fountain pen user. A very fun and entertaining insight into the world of fountain pens, demystifying the topics of nib grinding, Japanese pens, inks, and more. The episodes regarding Nagahara-san's insights and thoughts on writing and philosophy of names were fascinating. I hope to see more. As a side note, I find the extreme silence when no one is talking to be almost too quiet, so much so that I don't know if my phone accidentally disconnected or the podcast is still playing. This may just be personal, though, and then he puts a smiley face.
Do we need some background music?
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe I just have to do a more tight cut.
Yeah, we should do that.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Shreyas, for your 5-star review. The second one is from, again, the United States of America. XX Readhead XX. 5 stars. So CY and Jacob, great people, great knowledge. I'm really enjoying listening to these podcast episodes on my way to work or even while I journal. I don't have many people close to me that are fountain pen enthusiasts, so this is a great way to interact with other people who love the hobby. Thank you very much, Readhead.
Thank you for that.
XX Readhead XX. Hope that's how I actually am supposed to read that.
Right.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate that, and that's one of the reasons why we started the podcast, to really connect with other people and spread the knowledge of the fountain pen scene in Japan.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So I was talking to you a few days ago, Jacob, and we were mentioning, what are we going to talk about this episode? We didn't have a lot of things to talk about. But in the end, I think we're going to have quite a full episode today. Somehow, I think we're going to be able to talk for an hour. But we always start with, things that we've acquired since within these 2 weeks. But I noticed that there's nothing written on your side. Do you have anything that you got in the last 2 weeks?
No, I don't think so. Well, I did order some more Chinese Naginata nibs. So last time we talked about these pen BBS, like Naginata-ish calligraphy nibs, and we talked about how there were other Chinese pen makers, including Hongdian and Kaigelu. They've also made recently released new Naginata style nibs. So I've ordered one of each, and I thought I would have them by now, but they're still sitting in customs in Kanagawa, so maybe early next week.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed that there's a lot of like new Chinese they call them like calligraphy nibs, right? And we've noticed as well is that these nibs, they're not exactly shaped like Naginatas. I mean, they're very similar,
right,
but they're more flat, right, on the writing surface, whereas Naginatas tend to be a bit more round. So I'm really interested because I've noticed that in Taiwan, they've got like all sorts of variations of the Naginata nibs, and they call each variation like a different thing, which they claim is suited for various different types of Chinese script. So that's always really interesting. Really looking forward to what you think about these Hongdian nibs.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see, and I think I'm so excited about the fact that these Chinese pen makers are releasing all kinds of interesting new nibs, and it's a good trend. I'm all for it. Yeah.
In the meantime, I'm working on a project. Something that I've recently been doing is making a bunch of stack nibs, and I think stack nibs are pretty hard to sell. They're pretty hard to sell if you don't try them in person, right? Because really expensive, not really common. It's not like everybody's tried a stack nib before. So what I've done is I've made like 4 or 5 stack nibs, put them in a package, send them out somewhere. Send them to some friends, some customers,
Right.
and what I've asked them to do is try it out, have fun with it, enjoy it, and then once you're done, send it to the next person. And then if you want to buy one, you can buy one before you send it out to the next person.
That's pretty clever. So like a stack nib road trip.
It's like a caravan. Yeah, exactly. And so I did the first package, went out to the United States. It's been at 2 destinations so far, and I've sold 2 nibs so far. So we'll see. I sent 4 nibs out. There's only 2 nibs left. There's like another destination after that. So we'll see. We'll see what's happening with that. But I'm also putting a package together for the UK. And then I'm also considering a second package out to the US or Canada. So I'm busy putting that together. And as part of that, I need to get nibs. And one of my favorite places to get cheap, really basic nibs is this hole in the wall. I think we've talked about them before, but Marui Shoten.
Yeah, I think that was in our very first episode when we talked about the various shops in Japan. We mentioned Marui Shoten.
Yeah. Yep. And they're great. They're great people. And so I call them and I say, hey, I want to buy 6 platinum course nibs. And this was like 3 weeks ago. And they called me back. They're like, 2 things. First thing is that Platinum are doing a price increase in Japan. It's not been announced yet though, but they are going to do the price increase in Japan. And second thing, there's a shortage of 3776s. And I didn't know there was a shortage of 3776s. So it's quite interesting. Took quite a while for them to actually get to the store, but they finally did. Again, they didn't have all the colors or the sizes. So I said, I'll take whatever I can get, sure. and I showed them one of the stack nibs I was making with their nibs.
Right.
They seemed pretty intrigued, and they told me that actually Nagahara-san also goes there quite often. So I guess Nagahara-san does his shopping at Marui as well.
I'm surprised by that. I'm not surprised that he would go to Marui when he is in Tokyo, but I didn't think he would be in Tokyo that often.
Yeah, I don't think he's like here very often, but once every 2 or 3 months, I guess.
By the way, going back to your point about cost, part of that is of course your decision to only do gold nibs, right? I have 2 questions about that. My first question is, given that a stacked nib is inherently quite stiff because it's stacked, what is the advantage of gold nibs? And my second part of that question is, if you were to go with a steel nib, other than the new steel zoom nib we talked about in the last episode, are there any steel nibs with enough tipping to do what you need to do?
That's a very interesting question. There are, I think, a bunch of different angles to it. Let's start with the first question about the gold nib and the stiffness. No, the gold nib really depends on what nib you're using, but you can make a soft stack nib. And I have, in fact, made some soft stack nibs. Some by accident, some on purpose. I guess the trick is really balancing the thickness of the tine. Because if the tine is too soft, you can't really weld them together. Because when you weld, you have to take material and merge them together, right? So if it's too thin, then there's not enough material to merge.
Right.
That's one thing that you got to balance. But I have done a 14K. Sorry, Jacob. Vintage 14K large size sailor nib. I removed the engravings and then I put a double so 2 layers on top. So King Eagle on that. It's quite soft. Another one I did on a 21K, modern 21K King Eagle, where I basically slimmed down the tines. Just as you normally would, and that actually writes a lot like a KOP nib.
Right.
So very, very soft. So you can have softness and have a stack nib. I don't think those are mutually exclusive, but you do need to be careful with it, and the alloy does therefore matter quite a bit.
I see.
The second question about the steel nibs is, you can stack regular B nibs like from Yowo or whatever.
Right.
Like, I'm not saying that that's impossible, but the technique would be different. So I think I mentioned previously, and I also had written a blog about it, but
The hook, right?
But there are, yeah, exactly. So there are like three main ways that you can stack the nib together. The first is just a flat cut, where you cut the tipping on bottom and top together, and you put them together. I think that's like very, very straightforward. That's the way that most people are doing it, especially in the West. You have the zure, where you kind of do the same thing, but in order to get a larger surface, you what you do is you kind of how do I say this? You spread out the tines, the top layer and the bottom layer a bit, so that in the end the tipping is not a lot, but you get a wider surface area.
I see.
And that's probably like my least favorite way to do it. I've not really done it that way. The third way that you can do it is what Sailor does today, which is the hook method, where that you shape the top layer, the tipping of the top layer, to be like a hook, and then you shape the bottom layer to be kind of like a block, so that it can hook on top of the bottom layer. And that's much, much harder. And that's the way that I'm stacking my nibs right now. It's a challenge, for sure. And I would say if you're doing technique number 1, any nib can do it. If you're doing technique number 3, then you do really need that zoom like massive tipping.
Right.
Otherwise, it just wouldn't work.
Understood.
Yeah, so that's what I've been up to, but we're doing this in kind of a weird time now, because usually we meet maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks. I don't think I've seen you in about a month now.
Right.
At least several weeks, because as everybody knows, the Olympics have started. Japan, surprisingly, is doing very, very well in the Olympics. At first, I thought, when you host the Olympics, you get to add and remove some sports to the program. And usually the host country adds sports that they think they can win in. And this time they added like skateboarding. I was like, skateboarding? All the sports you could add, you added skateboarding? Turns out Japan is really good at skateboarding. I didn't know that.
Who knew? Yeah.
So Japan won the men's and women's gold, and surprisingly, Japan won the mixed table tennis doubles against China. That was incredible. I was watching it live, but I don't know if it's because of the Olympics or because we have very lax regulations. The COVID cases are spiraling out of control. We have more cases per capita than the United States. We have more cases per capita than India right now. And Tokyo is reaching 4,000 per day.
I just checked the news today, and in fact, today for the first time, Tokyo has exceeded 4,000 cases.
Yeah, doesn't sound like much, but 2 weeks ago it was 1,000.
Yeah.
So.
And this is during a state of emergency.
Yeah, and like I was complaining about it last time, but these Olympics people, it's totally not a bubble. They're on Bumble, they're on Tinder. I found an Irish athlete on Tinder the other day. I went looking, and it's crazy. It was crazy. But yeah, the regulations I read on the news today on Asahi Shimbun. So, Suga's strategy, quote unquote strategy, is to target dining and he's only targeted dining, and I'm just not convinced that that's the issue. Dining, not sure that's the issue. It's more like, people gathering in crowds, like in the metro, in the food court. I guess that's kind of dining, but you've got to buy groceries, so people like buying groceries like that's an issue, right? Issues that people are going out and not getting vaccinated. So that's a huge problem. And so at least one event that we know of, the event that was supposed to be in May, the Shitatameru Kai, that's probably going to be canceled.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything about that yet. Yeah, so we talked about this event called Shitatameru Kan, where both Eboya and Style Art, and I think some others I can't remember right now, were supposed to...
Nagahara.
Right. It was meant to be end of August. I haven't seen anything, but I suspect that's going to be cancelled. And also, I did find out now that there was meant to be a Tono Limbs event on August 29th, and that has just now been postponed to September 23rd.
Yeah, so we'll see we'll see how they go, but you're not holding my breath. Tips will probably still happen. Haven't heard anything about that, but it probably will happen. I think if the cases are below 1,000, tips will happen.
They will find one way or another to do tips. It seems very unlikely that will be cancelled. Yeah.
So aside from that, in terms of the big three news, we got some interesting news from the big three. I was surprised because when we talk about Pilot, of course we talk about the fountain pens, but everybody knows that Pilot doesn't make the majority of its money on fountain pens, right? It's got a lot of like general stationery, and I think the general consensus is that while Pilot, we adore Pilot, right? We're Pilot fanboys on this podcast, but I think the general consensus is that Pilot is just content to, dole out the boring stuff, not really invested in innovating in the fountain pen like space. Right. So I was really surprised when I got served an ad by Pilot's Instagram post or Instagram account. And this Pilot ad was particularly interesting to me because it was a link to a bunch of different articles, and included in them are plenty about fountain pens. So you have so it's called Kaku Gaski, which means we love writing. And this portal site has a bunch of things, including like the history of made in Japan Makie fountain pens, which they wrote just a few days ago. They have like a page where they describe how fountain pen nibs are made, for example. And the very first article that they had was talking about the Pilot Iroshizuku Blues, and they actually made a movie.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So this new page, it's not all about fountain pens. It's I think this is just about writing in general. But I'm surprised because they're actually putting a lot of marketing resources to this. The content is not new. I've read the content before, but that they're packaging it in a new way, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, Pilot has done a few websites like this before. I remember reading one about when they launched the Kakuno. Was a site that explains the thinking about the Kakuno and why they launched it and how it all went. And then, as we have talked about before, I believe they have a really good website about the custom series, which goes into great detail about the history and the various models.
Yep.
So they do have that. But about this website you're talking about now, there was one thing in particular I found interesting. They mentioned that Pilot is the only fountain pen maker in the world that makes all parts themselves.
Including the tipping.
Yes. So that was pretty interesting. Another thing is, going back to what you said about, pilots are considered boring and so on. I think when people talking about pilot being boring, I think they are focusing on like the custom line. It's very easy to forget that there are quite a lot of models, and especially at the higher end, they have a lot of colorful options, including Urushi and Maki, and we talked about the silver in the last episode. They have various colorful Predator models. They keep making new capless models in all colors of the rainbow. They have all kinds of, especially in Japan, like store limited editions. They actually have a lot of models if you look at their entire lineup.
Yeah, and I'm really happy that this has happened because, as you say, Pilot has a strong collection of items. Yeah. It's just maybe their target audience is just not the same as Sailor. They're like more targeted towards kind of the office people, and I do think that it's a shame that they don't have anything on the medium range, like in the $300 to $500 range. That's a bit more exciting, a bit more spicy, but I think at the end of the day, pilot fountain pens are not dead. That's what I want to say here. And on top of that, and this really surprised me, for the first time in my life, Jacob,
right,
I saw a advertisement for fountain pens on TV.
Oh, really?
And guess who did it? It's Pilot. Yeah, Pilot ran an advertisement on television, and it was about general writing, but there was a big portion dedicated to fountain pens in this 30-second ad, and I thought that was just really cool, to see this guy holding his custom 74 up on television. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
Pilot also put out another announcement in the last 2 weeks, and this announcement is regarding one of the pens that you really liked.
Yeah, so this was about the Pilot Capless LS. I don't have the announcement in front of me, but if I remember correctly, they said that they have found that there's a possibility that it can be a problem with the knock mechanism because there might be some rust under the knock mechanism, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they said that there are some parts that seem to be more prone to rust than they had expected, and yeah.
And I think this is very interesting, and this is what really, I think, in my view, sets Pilot apart from, for example, Platinum, right? So here, I would say Pilot are being proactive, because I have not heard anyone complaining about this. I think this is something they found out, or maybe there was some pen was returned or whatever. They realized it, and they are proactively dealing with this, and they're saying that if you have this problem, here's how you can get that part returned, right? This is how you deal with a quality problem if you care deeply about quality.
Yeah, and let's say that the Capless LS is not it's not flying off the shelves, right? It's not their bestseller model, but that they still, they put in the effort to put out this announcement. They're saying, if you have a problem, we're going to handle it. We're going to take care of it for you. Like, that's really the mark of a company that takes QA really seriously.
Yes, and I think this is a very stark contrast to Platinum, how Platinum handled the problems with Curidas, for example. So earlier today, I went to Platinum's Japanese website. I looked at all the news and all the press releases, and I found no mention whatsoever about this cracking issue and about how to go about getting your pen replaced. Meanwhile, if you go to Amazon Japan and if you search for Platinum Curidas, you found tons of angry reviews about all the quality problems with the pen.
Yeah, and I think the LS announcement actually they actually extend that care to pens that were sold in 2019, like all the way back. So and they're saying that, you know what, we know about this, and we've gone ahead and we've actually tried to fix it already. Yeah, so That was really really cool. I think of Pilot. But did you have this problem when you had the LS?
No, I didn't. And I think looking at Pilot's press release, this only affects a very small number of the LS units, and I don't think I had that one.
Yeah. So I have the press release in front of me right now. It says, "Thank you very much for using Pilot's Pilot products. The LS on the knock side, there are some cases. There's a possibility that rust can happen, which and it doesn't actually say that it impacts the writing, but it says that there's a possibility that rusting may occur, right? And they're saying that basically they are preparing a new knock unit for everybody, and if you want to return it or get a new one, it will be ready in November. So that's incredible.
Yeah, that's very well done, Pilot. Hats off.
So that was Pilot. We have another Japanese update.
Yeah, I just added that now. Yeah, so this is not directly station related, but yesterday Sailor announced their earnings for the first 6 months of this year, and it actually looks pretty good for Sailor right now. So they have a net profit of 28 million yen for the first 6 months, compared to a net loss of 91 million the same period last year, and the sales are up 18%. So it looks like they are getting back on their feet. Unfortunately, this earnings announcement is called the Kessan Tanshin, which is a very brief, like, summary report. It doesn't have these juicy details about, breakdown by markets and, their own explanations. That comes later. We will have to dig into that when it arrives. But for now, it looks like Sailor is doing well, and they are projecting a full year profit of 56 million yen. So Sailor is back on its feet.
Yeah, which means Sailor and Plus, the acquisition, it could be coming very soon.
Yeah, actually, we are now within the so-called conversion period. So technically, Plus can convert whenever they want now. That initial period has passed.
Yeah.
They might not, because as we described when we covered that news initially, Plus has set up a number of conditions about profitability for a whole year. Those conditions are not legally binding, so Plus can choose to convert if they want. But they might wait and see, but they could if they want to.
Yeah.
By the way, yes, very, very, very briefly, while we are on this very narrow topic of stationery-related financial news, another company that is doing well now is Tomoegawa. So 1 week ago, they announced a new a revised earnings forecast for the next 6 months, and they revised it up quite dramatically, like 5 times, I think, and the stock just jumped, skyrocketed for that reason. So apparently one of the things Tomoegawa does is they make this optical film that is used for displays, including smartphones, and apparently they got lots of orders for this optical film, and that is what is driving their profits right now. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't say anything about the part we're interested in, the paper and the future of Tomoe River. I haven't seen any official word about that, but at least the company as a whole is doing pretty well now.
Yeah, that's always like really positive news, I think. But it also shows that their decision to pivot away from Tomoe River paper, right? That might have been a good step for them, because that freed up resources to focus on other parts of their business.
Yeah, and I think I don't have any inside information whatsoever, but I think it's at least within the realm of possibility that another Japanese paper maker could potentially buy that entire business. Because one thing I've recently come to realize is that Tomoegawa is actually quite small for a Japanese paper maker. So, for example, we recently talked about Cosmo Air Light and B7 Tranix, right? And we said that both of those papers are made by a company called Nippon Paper Group. Turns out that Nippon Paper Group has a market cap 15 times Tomoegawa. So they are a lot bigger, and in fact, Nippon Paper is not the biggest one. There's another one called Oje Paper of OK Fools fame. Oje Paper, it has twice the market cap of Nippon Paper and has like almost 30,000 employees. So Tomoegawa is like a tiny player in this game. Like I could definitely see a bigger player buying a part of their business.
Yeah, and I think when we broke the news, a lot of people were saying, oh, well, what's Hobonichi going to do? And Hobonichi has actually confirmed on their website saying that for the 2022 diaries, that's still going to be Tomoe River. But for the years beyond, they don't know yet. I think very interestingly, I think what they said was that they had not used the paper of the new machine.
Right.
So does that mean they've not used the new Tomoe River?
Yeah, I saw that too. I found that interesting. I draw two possible conclusions. First of all, it tells you something about how far in advance they order paper. The other one is they might have known things before the general public and maybe even investors, and they might have made decisions based on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, and just right before we go back into our juicy topic of the day, I almost forgot, but I saw on I think Goulet Pens that they are releasing a Justice 95 in rhodium trim. And this does not exist in Japan as far as I know.
Yeah, you mentioned that. I think there was you sent a line message or whatever it was. Yeah, I can't see that anywhere in Pilot Japan's website. So maybe this is US exclusive. I'm not sure.
It does say coming in August, so maybe we just don't know about
it. It's possible. I'm not sure how popular it is in Japan. I don't see it much in Japan, but I got the impression that it's quite popular in like Hong Kong and Taiwan.
I do like the Justice. I think it's cool because for writing kanji, it's just very good to have like that extra flexibility, and then you can adjust if you need to take like quick notes or something like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but it's pretty cool. I don't think I'll be getting one because we've talked about it. I don't really use cartridge converter pens, but it's really. I think I wouldn't be surprised if this was a U.S. market only thing, because I feel like the fanatics of rhodium trim, like I don't really hear about that in Japan, to be honest. Whereas people in the US seem to really, really, there's a subsection of the community that really wants silver trims on everything.
For sure. Yeah, I noticed that too.
Yeah. So there's that. All right. We've actually talked about this particular piece of news before, but more information has come out since then. So definitely want to circle back on this, but we also received a listener question that ties into this this next topic quite nicely. So I'm going to read out the question. I'm not going to read out the name. I'm going to read out the question. Hey, I love the podcast and just listened to the latest episode. As far as the Moonman versus Kaweco issue, I'm wondering if it isn't kind of fair game for Kaweco to take this copyright route. If a Chinese company can make a new pen as an exact copy of another company's pen and is immune to any kind of copyright lawsuit, then it does create an imbalance. For example, maybe Kaweco could make a cheaper copy of Mont Blanc pens as well, but if they did that, they surely would be sued and would have to pay for it. It is kind of a dirty move, but maybe that's just how the world is going these days when it comes to international competition. Barring coming up with new laws that all companies in all countries promise to follow, I'm wondering how you think the logical business route for all of these big companies will follow, given the proliferation of good pens like these from cheaper manufacturers in China. Thanks. You have any thoughts on that?
Shall we first cover the new that press release or that announcement from Kaweco that you found on Reddit?
Sure. I'm going to just grab...
I searched for that myself. I couldn't find it on Kaweco's website. I wasn't able to verify that was indeed an official announcement, but it looked kind of official from the Reddit.
Yeah, it did look kind of official. It seemed like it was mailed by somebody. And I mean, it does have Kaweco's CEO signature and the stamp, and everything. So does seem pretty legit. I'm gonna read out the announcement. It's gonna be kind of a boring 60 seconds. So if you've already read it, maybe listen to me read it again. All right. So it says, official statement. Dear friends and fans of writing instruments, fountain pens in special. Most of you know the eventful history of the brand Kaweco. We're not going to tell it now, don't worry, but the brand has been around since 1883. In 1980, the company as well as the brand Kaweco disappeared. In 1994, H&M, I can't say this, Gutberlet? I can't say this word. GmbH revived the brand. Not even 10% of the specialist dealers still knew the brand Kaweco. So, both nationally and internationally unknown. Only a few collectors of old writing instruments knew what Kaweco was. I don't know why I said that like I did. Today, 2021, 27 years later, the brand is back. That long period alone is a clear indication of the hard work and the long time and large amounts of investments. We are very proud of that and we want to protect what we've achieved. We currently export to more than 60 countries. Everybody who knows the Kaweco and the Gutberlet team knows that we also support other manufacturers and brands. We work closely with many and help newcomers with technical and practical solutions, no matter where these companies are based. It therefore has us very annoyed that the brands Wingsung, Delike, and Moonman have massively disrupted the sale of our products with several design copies. We're not talking about a few hundreds, but about several thousand pieces per country and year. We have been trying to contact these companies for several years by finding out the exact address of the company or contacting the responsible persons. We have tried this through trade fairs, emails, by Chinese friends, Chinese partners, and patent lawyers without success. Based on an example with Moonman, you can see our efforts. After our registration of the Moonman trademark and the first cancellations in Germany, a man called in and asked why we're doing this. We have requested him to change the design of his T1 fountain pen and to stop selling Delike products that harm the design of our Sport, Lilliput, and Supra 3-parts technique, or at least also change their designs. He could get his brands back over time against the refund of fees in case no more Kaweco clones can be found on the market. The man claimed only to do the distribution for Delike and that Moonman only takes tiny ideas from other companies. We then proposed a contract. As a result, our patent attorney drew up a simple contract and a Chinese partner agency translated it. Delivery/notification of that agreement was not possible. When contacting by phone all findable Moonman-related phone numbers on the internet, the line was interrupted again and again. It is clear to us now that this was a delaying tactic because now they are switching to the brand Mahjong, which is not the brand they're switching to. We want to emphasize that this is not our intention to harm anyone. We're always happy about the success of other brands, but please not at our expense or with our designs. We're always willing to talk if others are honest. Now, everyone can make his own judgments. If you have any kind of question, we are always happy to answer. Enjoy handwriting and please stay safe. Mr. Michael Gutberlet, CEO, Kaweco, Germany. H&M Gutberlet, GmbH. All right, that was a lot.
So to me,
man, my mouth is dry, so please talk. Yeah,
that sounds more like a rambling Tumblr post than an official press release from a company. The choice of words was very strange. Like, I wouldn't expect them to say annoyed in an official press release. The whole press release is very, very weird. I'm conflicted by this whole thing. I can understand and sense their frustration, but when they mentioned the T1, that's when I lost all my sympathy for Kaweco. So we covered this news like a few episodes back, right? And we talked about how it was Wingsung and D-Like and Moonman, and you can kind of see what they're getting at with Wingsung, because there's one model called like 3006 or whatever it is that looks a lot like a Kaweco Sport. There's the D-Like Alpha, which is basically
that's a Kaweco Sport.
It's a bigger Kaweco Sport with some important modifications though. But then we couldn't understand what Moonman was about. Maybe they knew something we did not know about, about how these companies are linked. We were a bit confused about that. But now we understand what it's about. Do they think that the Moonman T1 is too close to Kaweco Sport? And that's, or maybe per KO, I'm not sure. But that's when I lost all my sympathy for Kaweco, because to me, if you say that the Moonman T1 is the Kaweco clone, that's borderline delusional to me. That I can't really see. And on top of that, if you go back to Kaweco's history, you can see that the Kaweco Sport has been around since I think 1935. It's been around for like 86 years. So 86 years after your pen was originally announced, you're basically complaining that a pen maker makes another faceted pen. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, which, I mean, I think Wall Eversharp was the one to start this Art Deco design of faceted pens. I might be wrong, but I'm sure Kaweco was not the first to do faceted pens. I think there's a when it comes to this, right? I think there's a certain we have to consider the glance value, right? When you look at a Moonman T1, do you go, that's a Kaweco, right? Come on, that's just not realistic. Right. I think the number of facets are different. The size is different. It's not even the same filling mechanism. Right.
Yeah, I mean, if that's your benchmark, you might as well say that the Pilot Kakuno is a clone. You might say that Fine Writing International's Bronze Age is a Kaweco clone, right?
Yeah. And I'm going to read out one of the comments, which is a guy who claims to be a lawyer. But he does have the necessary link, so I'm inclined to believe it. He says, rather than let this get buried in a thread, I want to emphasize it here. Kaweco has no intellectual property rights to the shape of Kaweco spurts. We can get into the nitty-gritty of international trademark law, or you can take the EU's IPO reasoning when they rejected Kaweco's application to protect the sport's design. It turns out they don't even have any kind of claim to the sport's design. So translated from the decision rejecting Kaweco's appeal. Of the application's rejection, it says, this is translated from the decision, none of the features of the form applied for lead to consumers perceiving it as a fountain pen, ballpoint pen, rollerball, or other writing implement that deviates significantly from the norm or customary in the industry. In other words, it's a generic shape. The appeal. The EU IPO found that every design element had either a decorative or a functional purpose, and that none of it was sufficiently distinctive to serve as a basis for trademark protection. As support, it cited a number of other faceted pens in the market, including Montblancs, Rotrings, and Faber-Castells. The appeal decision emphasized the fact that the registered item combines several purely decorative or functional elements of other commercially available pens, large diameter, long angular cap without clip, does not mean that the overall shape is perceived as distinctive. Rather, it is a minor variant of common shapes, the components of which all have a purely functional or decorative meaning. Overall, the registered design does not show any special features with that regard to the relevant category of goods: fountain pens, ballpoint pens, rollerball pens, and other writing implements with caps. But, not only is the Moonman T1 like just wildly different, and even the technology is different, right? They can't even claim intellectual property rights to that shape.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. Where I'm a little bit more conflicted is with the D-like Alpha. So at a distance, you would definitely say that the D-like Alpha looks like a Kaweco Sport. But if you look closer, it's actually, in my view, a superior pen for 3 reasons. The first reason is that unlike the Kaweco Sport, the D-like Alpha is just long enough to fit a proper usable converter. I think that's a very important advantage over the Kaweco Sport. The second advantage of the D-like Alpha is the nib. So you just need to go to Google, search for like Kaweco Sport hard start, Kaweco Sport like skipping. You're gonna find a lot of people reporting problems. I think that might be more of a thing in the past now with the Bock nibs, whatever. But as a pen maker, it's ultimately your responsibility that the nibs perform. And Kaweco has had quality problems, whereas D-Like's steel nibs, especially the mini food, is like chef's kiss. It's some of the best steel nibs around in my view. So it's definitely a better writing experience, the D-Like Alpha. And third, the D-Like Alpha comes in all kinds of colorful acrylics and nice celluloid like acetate resin. So it's a more colorful pen. You can write longer because you can use a proper converter, and the nib is better. So as a consumer, I'm glad that the D-Like Alpha exists on the market, because in my view it's a superior pen. I don't care that it's cheaper, I care about that's the superior pen. At the same time, I can see why it looks quite similar, and I kind of wish they would have deviated a little bit more from the Kaweco Sport design.
Yeah, but I do have to say, right? I mean, I think one of the last advantages, which did not talk about, is cost. It's a lot cheaper to buy a D-like pen than an equivalent Kaweco pen, right? So I want to point out here that being able to manufacture something at a cheaper cost, that's innovation, right? Like manufacturing processes, that's innovation. It's not just about the shape of the product. Being able to put it out to the market at a price that is reasonable, right? That's important. I mean, I'm going to take an example, right? Laptop computers. Laptop computers been around forever. But 20 years ago, first laptop computers came about, they were bricks. Right? And now, you have a bunch of different companies making laptop computers, and they all kind of look the same. But you wouldn't be able to claim, X maker copied, IBM or whatever for making the laptop. That's ridiculous. Another example, wood case pencils. Like, you literally would not be able to make wood case pencils because they're all just generically the same shape. But the lead that you use in it, the kind of wood that you use, the paint that you use, right? That all counts, right? That all counts for design. So the things that you talked about, being able to fit a converter, that's massive. That's huge, right? Or the Moonman that apparently looks like the Franklin Christoph, that has a roll stop. Right? I mean, yes, we can say that it does take those design cues, but I don't think it's fair to say, well, these people haven't innovated on these products at all. They're just like coming out with like part for part counterfeits.
Yeah, and I think your point about cost is a very relevant one. So if you make some part by hand because it adds value, like for example, maybe you have this beautiful urushi design with like inlaid rodent pieces, or maybe you manually check all the nibs that they perform correctly, or you maybe even do a nib grind, maybe you write a signature on it or something like that. If you add value to it that way, I'm all for it. But if you say we do these things by hand because we've always done it by hand, and then you complain that someone can do it more cheaply because they invested in automation, and you don't have my sympathy anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the Nippon Art series that Pilot has, right? I think that's quite a good example. The Nippon Art is screen printed pen. Right, it's part of their like quote unquote urushi lineup, but it's a screen printed pen. You can get it for about $300. The handmade urushi stuff, right? That's like thousands of dollars, and then there's all sorts of things in between. Yeah. But you can differentiate in like the stuff that actually takes a long time. We're gonna price that at a very high price because we know that we've got the best artisans, and you can't compete with us on the artistry of it, right? You know what you're selling. So in terms of Kaweco, they have the Kaweco Art Sport, right? They have some beautiful acrylics that they use, and they actually already do price it at quite a high price. But then you can say, okay, we have these acrylics that we've made, and that's why we're pricing it at this bracket. That makes sense to me. Whereas what Kaweco is actually doing is they're doing the same thing, printing a different logo on it, saying it's a collaboration, and being like, okay, we're going to charge like $100 more. Or the ridiculous sterling silver pen that they came out with, which cost like $1,000, right? That's not innovation. I think that's like misunderstanding where your position is in the market. And so, we've been on this topic for a long time. I remember when we first talked about the T1, we did talk about how some people were saying that it was a mashup between the Kaweco Sport and TWSBI Echo or something, which again to me doesn't really make sense. But I think in this case we're both in agreement. Kaweco is kind of overstepping their boundaries. Yeah.
And also, sorry, just to go back to the question, Kaweco is not trying to enforce copyright here. They are registering the competitors' names as trademarks, which is a whole different thing.
Yeah, because they don't have a copyright to the design. So yeah, the logical business route for all of these big companies to follow, in my opinion, is make better products. You got to keep making strong products that really push the boundaries. Like if you look at, for example, Sailor, right? They're pushing the boundaries in terms of like color and design. They're not innovating on shape, but they're definitely innovating on like different combinations of designs, and that in a way is innovation. If you look at, for example, Pilot, they've actually cut costs several times. On the Iroshizuku inks, I think they're like half the price that they were when they first came out. And economy of scale, that's an innovation. Innovate on distribution channels, but don't stop because you found something good and it worked for a few years. If somebody else can do what you're doing at half the price, then you probably got to go back to your processes and weed out those inefficiencies. I think that's the way to go. And especially if you're a big company, then you have those resources.
Yeah, and the final thing I will say is that the Moonman T1 is the pen I wish Kaweco had made instead of that Perkio.
Yeah, if they made the Kaweco T1. I think we would be buying that.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
All right, so that took a lot longer than than we expected. So we were gonna do like a few questions, but doesn't seem like we'll have too much time to do too many questions. So let's just do like maybe 2.
Sure.
All right. So Eric from Instagram asks, "What is your stationary everyday carry, and how do you carry it? Notebooks, planners, pens, pen case, in a bag, or in your pockets? What can you not leave the house without?"
So when you talk about carry, there's an assumption that you are like, going somewhere, right? For the last few weeks, I haven't really left my house much, so there's not much need for an everyday carry. I have pens at home, but I don't walk around much. But as for what I'm using most of the time, I have this Toyota, 5-pen or 6-pen tray on my desk, and that's usually where my inked up pens live. And I usually have like 2 or 3 inked up pens. Typically like one like fine-ish nib, could be like a mini nag or a Waverly or something like that with a darker ink, and then usually one broader pen could be like a BB or Course or Zoom or a Fat Nag or whatever with a lighter ink. That's usually my standard setup. When I do leave the house, the only thing I want to make sure is that I bring at least 1 pen. I have on a few occasions left and forgot my pens, and I had to buy some emergency preppies on my way to work. That has happened. In terms of like paper and planners, I've been very much into these like system techo, like refillable, like rim binder style planners. The most recent one I bought was one from Ashford. I talked previously about how Ashford doesn't have very good paper, but they do have some decent planners. And I got one recently in this cryptic format called HB times WA5. Have you heard about HB times WA5?
I have not. What is it?
So HB times WA5 means the same height, H, as Bible size. And same width as A5. Which is a very roundabout way of saying it's basically like a square-shaped planner. But you can use just Bible-sized refills if you want. You can buy from Ashford or from other planner makers these perfect-sized refills. What I'm doing is that I'm just buying A4 loosely sheet paper, and I'm cutting my own refills. So I have my Ashford planner full with B7 Tranex right now. So that's my current setup.
Yep. As for me, I have a kimono pen case that I quite like. It's a 4-pen case, so I take 4 of the day, usually with a stack nib, a flex nib, an italic nib, and then whatever else is the flavor of the day. So that covers me quite a lot. And then for notebook, I have a variety of notebooks. I have some plotters, so just really whatever I can reach. And I can either plop that, preferably something that's smaller than an A5. That way I can put it in any bag that I have. And I did in the past carry my fountain pen, my Mont Blanc, in my front pocket, my front jeans pockets, which some people might be terrified at the sound of that. But that worked pretty well for me for about like 5 to 6 years. So I think, just whatever works. My fear is not that I haven't brought a pen, because if I didn't bring a pen, I'll just use a ballpoint pen, whatever. Like, it's one day I can survive. My fear is if I didn't bring the right paper, and if I have the right pen, don't have the right paper, then I don't even want to write with my pen, because it's gonna like feather everywhere. It's a bad writing experience. So I have on occasion gone out to buy emergency paper pads.
I see. With different priorities.
Different priorities. All right. Last question. Which is kind of similar to what we discussed before. Do you think we are now at quote unquote peak fountain pen, with the reiteration of the same things in different shades of the same color being churned out on a near monthly basis? Asks Malcolm from Fountain Pen Network.
Do you want to go first on this one?
Sure. I think we reached peak fountain pen about probably like 70 years ago, where people started making pens. There really is only so many ways that you can make a pen, right? I mean, there are basic necessities that you have to fulfill. You have to fulfill that there needs to be a nib. You have to fulfill that it has to take ink somehow, and usually that results in some kind of a cylindrical shape, or it can have like facets, or it can be square or whatever, but some long-ish cylindrical shape. And in my opinion, everything else is just a variation of that. Whether you have flap tops, whether you have tapers, whether you have facets, it's just all the variation of a very simple, basic shape. And so I think we've definitely reached peak fountain pen there. In terms of where things are innovating, I think is the storytelling. And here's where I think we have not reached peak fountain pen, is how well companies can tell the story of why they're making this product, and therefore what is the story, what is the emotion that it evokes in its customers. So I think Bungabox are really, really good at this, right? Give an example with their recent Alice pen with a white and kind of pale blue finials. I think the Alice pen, it's a white and pale blue pen. We've seen this pen before, but the way that Bungabox sold it is that it's evocative of Alice's dress from Alice in Wonderland. It's the color scheme of her dress, and that she has Rodin. This time in the version 2, they have like the kaleidoscope, which I guess is kind of like moving into like a different world, which Alice in Wonderland happens to be set in, and that kind of storytelling is really important when it comes to selling these luxury items. Same as the sterling silver, the silver and Pikachu. Right, like that's another story that they told. And so I think as long as we are humans and we value art, we'll always value some kind of storytelling. And so in that way, I don't think we are at peak fountain pen.
Yeah, I think the point, I didn't think about that, but your point about storytelling is a good one. And I think that's really what sets the exciting Pro Gear limited editions from the not so exciting ones, right? You can take your previous green pen and your previous purple pen and you mix them together and say, let's call this some new name, and without any backstory, and it's kind of boring. Or you could do like what Hachimonja does, and make a new pen called Ginzan Snow. And Hachimonja is based in Yamagata, and for those who don't know, there's this beautiful onsen resort in Yamagata called Ginzan Onsen. It looks like a scene from like a Hayao Miyazaki movie. It's like Sento Chihiro almost. It's absolutely beautiful, and I think they managed to capture some of that in the pen. So that's really how you do it well.
The translator's note: Hayao Miyazaki is from Ghibli, and Sento Chihiro is Spirited Away.
Yes, sorry. Yes. But other than that, I still think we see, if you look at some of the trends right now in the West, I think one of the trends is that you have these smaller pen makers that they're pouring their own acrylics, and then you have, in China in particular, you have now, as we talked about in this episode earlier, about this trend about new nibs and also new filling systems. I think that's still going to go on for a while. I think there are a lot of interesting now dead filling systems that could revive. Like I think we talked about this Hoshiawase and other filling systems. I'm very excited to see more of that in the future. One more thing I would say is kind of sort of tangentially related, but we have talked a lot about how glass pens for the last 1 or 2 years have just taken off in Japan. I mean, glass pens have already been around. I mean, it's been around for forever, right? But at some point, people went from just needing one glass pen for their ink testing to buying all the Hase pens in all the colors of the rainbow, and waiting hours outside Tsutaya to buy the latest TOOS pen, and then just fighting over a small amount of pens in stock at some online store. It's absolute glass pen frenzy, and I think we might see more of that in the West. I think we might see more people buying glass pens in the future.
Yeah, definitely agree. And I've been getting questions on Instagram about glass pens as well, so I definitely think that's a trend that's going to continue. All right, Mara, I think that's it. That's it for today then. This was a more action-packed episode than I had expected it to be.
We'll see if we get any one-star reviews.
All right. So, I'll see you around then. All right. And thank you everybody for listening. I've noticed that we've gotten a slowdown on reviews. So if you haven't reviewed us on our podcast, definitely please do give us a review. We're going to read out reviews, every single episode. Right now, again, we don't have a way to monetize this. So your review is really, really important to us. It helps us spread the word and, just spread the knowledge. I think this is what all this podcast is about.
Can I just add one more thing to that? So we have recently, especially with the last episode, but I think more than one episode, we have a problem with, for Apple Podcasts in particular, it's been a delay, like several days before it shows up on Apple Podcasts. If you really want to listen to the episode when it comes out, when you see, the Instagram stories and you can't wait, go to tokyoinklings.com and play it there. Or upgrade, or sideways, or upgrade from Apple Podcast to, I don't know, Overcast or some other podcast player.
Yeah, that's right. And we are working on it. I did have a chat with Apple, and they say they fixed it, so we're going to see in a few hours.
Yep.
All right. So with that, this has been great. My name is CY. You can find me on my website at tokyostationpens.com, on Instagram at tokyostationpens, and on Twitter at tokyostationmnh.
And my name is Jacob, and I'm Foodafan on Instagram and Twitter, and I have a blog at foodafan.com.
Bye-bye.